Ready to start? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The time is now 6:03 p.m. and tonight we are here to listen to the school committee's, the school superintendent's presentation on the proposed budget. And the proposal for the fiscal year 2026 budget has been thoroughly reviewed and vetted by the school committee at two previous workshops. Both workshops are online for review, and we're very eager to hear, Dr. Cummings, what you have for us. So.
Great. Well, thank you, Alex. And so I will kind of give a broad overview of the budget, and Dan, I'll just kind of point over to you when I need to switch the slides. So thank you. Usually it's self-controlled, so we're a little bit of a different setting today. No worries. So we have.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public hearing for the Narragansett School System budget fiscal year 2026? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 3-0 with Councilor Jason Colony's absent, as well as Councilor James Durkin absent. Thank you.
All right. Great. Well, thank you, and thank you for kind of engaging in this discussion tonight. You know, as I go over things, please feel free to stop, ask questions. We're happy to go deeper on any of the topics that we covered this evening. My intent tonight is to give you a sense of what goes into the proposed school district budget. We do certainly have here, members of our school committee are here, and also our team, so if you switch. You know, the budget, as you well know, does not happen quickly nor without a whole lot of work. And so our team, particularly Karen, our finance director, Melissa, our director of student services, Gail, our director of curriculum, and our principals and support staff, Julio, Steve, you know, put a ton of work into this. And we actually start working on our budget in November. And so putting all the pieces together is, you know, certainly an undertaking that we take both seriously and with a lot of thought. And one of the things that, you know, I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing is that the school committee really sets direction, right? So the school committee has a strategic plan, really set goals, and then our budget is the way to make those goals come together. And so for us as a community, the school committee has really set ambitious goals around learning, around access, around having equitable schools where all students have a chance to learn and thrive. And really the things that we do are all meant to make those goals come together. So as a part of the process, you know, we have several dates, some of which we are already in and some which are coming ahead. The school committee voted to approve the budget last week. You know, this is your public hearing. I know you go through the town portion of the budget coming forward. There is another opportunity, if necessary, for the school committee to get together with the town council, and that's on April 28th. If you know, either the committee or the town would like to meet, if both entities don't believe that they need to get together, then we do not need to hold that meeting. And so, you know, first of all, let me talk to you a little bit about who's in our schools. So we are this year right around 966 students. That sometimes goes up and down by 1 or 2 students depending on kids moving into the district. We have 6 students who are placed out of district, 2 for whom we have to pay tuition, and those are typically students whose educational needs cannot be met within the district. They have a specialized profile that requires more intensive services. We have 21 students who attend career and technical programs out of the district, and I'll go over that in a minute. We have 11 that attend 5 charter schools. Those are typically K-6 or K-8 students. There are 17 students who are homeschooled. That is down from maybe 3 or 5 years ago, where it was up close to 30 coming out of COVID. So that continues to go down, and I think we had 3 return this month. We do take in 33 students from Jamestown, so those are students that pay tuition to come to the Narragansett schools. That's a agreement that we've had in place with Jamestown for about 9 years now. And Jamestown students, when they only have a K-8 program, so when they leave Jamestown, they have the choice of coming to Narragansett or to North Kingstown. So we take a number of Jamestown students. We have 58 students coming into our district for CTE, and that's grades 9 through 12. And there's roughly, this is a hard number to pin down, so somewhere in the range of 50 students, K through 12, who attend private schools.
Quick question.
Yes?
What's the breakdown of the 966 between elementary, middle, and high schools?
That is a great question. So I will go over that in just a second, but if you go ahead a
Unless it's
little
already in the
bit.
packet.
Yep, it is in there. And so, but if you can hold on, I will go over that in just a second.
Perfect.
So, one of the things that's often not considered about Narragansett, because you all live here, so you know this, but everyone thinks of Narragansett as being a relatively wealthy community. Over a quarter of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch, which is an indicator of a student being in poverty. And so, if you think about it, 1 out of 4 students is in poverty in the Narragansett schools. When you consider that and you compare us to districts that have kind of similar demographics, we certainly outperform any district with our same demographics. We are about 15% students of color. That has gradually risen over the last 4 or 5 years as our community has become gradually more diverse. We still have very few students, I believe there are 7 this year, who are English language learners. We're at about 16% students who have an IEP or require specialized instruction, and around 4% at 504 plans.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that? I'm just wondering, are you concerned at all about what's happening at the federal level for the IEPs and the 504s? I mean, will it affect those students' plans in any way?
So that is a great question that I wish I had the crystal ball to be able to answer you very clearly. Here's what our best guess is that there may be some disruptions to funding. I am relatively confident that we will still get the resources. How those resources delivered, I believe, will become less efficient because there is a really kind of well-practiced infrastructure that gets those funds to us pretty quickly from the federal government, so I think that's going to get disrupted. I do not believe that we'll have interruptions to service. There certainly are going to be lots of interruptions to regulations and laws and those types of things. We do a really good job with our special ed students, and so I don't anticipate that'll get in the way of our day-to-day work. I do think it's going to severely impact the regulatory agencies such as RIDE and the Department of Ed.
Thank you.
So, where we are, and this is current staffing, is that we have around 138 teachers. I always laugh at the 0.8 because it's like 0.8 of a person, a part-time job. 28 teacher assistants. We do have our own transportation, unlike other districts that contract out their transportation. We have our own buses and drivers. As you know, our schools are in great shape. We have great operations and maintenance staff. And so overall, we're at around 240 people all in, and that's to meet all the requirements that we get from RIDE, right? So, we've had some really great outcomes over the last couple of years. We were recognized by the College Board and the AP Honor Roll as being among the best high schools in the country, and so we are very close to being at the very highest rating. We got it at 2 out of 3 indicators, but they give you the one that you don't get is your rating, right? And so that's really nice. The number of students who are taking AP classes, when I first got to Narragansett in 2016, we were right around 25 or 30% of students before they graduated took an AP class. Last year's graduating class, we were over 65% of students when they graduated took an AP class. and it should be right around 70 for this year. And so we're really proud of that.
How many AP classes do you offer? I saw a list once and it looked like a very expensive list.
Yeah, it's right around 14, give or take, and
Amazing,
so
that's wonderful.
yeah, it's really a terrific program, and we're really proud of our students for continuing to challenge themselves. But we've added 1 or 2 AP courses every year for the last several years. Our CTE programs are amazing. If you recall, we have plumbing, I almost just called it farming, agri-science. We have the computer science, the digital media literacy, the education, and our newest one is sports medicine that has attracted quite a bit of interest from students. Our preschool is amazing, and again, one of the things that we attribute the success of the district to is the commitment on the part of the school committee and the town council to provide high quality early education. Every research study out there supports that approach to making sure that students are reading at grade level at grade 3. We see a reduction in the number of students being identified in need of specialized instruction, and more students really engaging and thriving in the early grades. So that has really been a success. And you may have noticed, we just won the D2 Women's Basketball Championship. Mm-hmm. So our athletics program is doing really well as well. So one of the things that I also wanted to highlight, go ahead, is there was a study that came out about 2 weeks ago from Harvard, and it rated not, and I want to be clear about this, not who has the highest scores in Rhode Island, but who has improved the most since 2019. And so when you think about the resources that we have devoted and what we have looked at in terms of how we have supported our students, Narragansett, both in math and in ELA, has the highest rate of growth in math and ELA of any district in the state. And that's really attributable to A, the resources that we put in, and B, the innovative teaching that our teachers do. And that doesn't happen without support and resources. And so the reason I bring that up in this presentation is that it's really important to understand that in a time where every other district in the state either grew slowly or actually went down over time, Narragansett excelled. And why is that? Again, because of the support of the community that has allowed us to do some innovative things over time. So that is math, and if you go to the next one, Dan, reading is in the same place, right? So we have exceeded where we were in 2019 in both cases by almost a full grade level. And so I think that's really important to note, right? And again, that happens because we've been able to devote the right resources and the right staffing resources to kids.
I think this is a really interesting, and I will make sure that we all have questions at the end, but I was doing a double take on this because I saw % free or reduced price lunch, and then we're talking about reading and math scores, and I understand it, but it's very interesting to see holistically where everyone stands in the state from a % free or reduced lunch, and then
right,
in relation to, and this is really great to see. Really appreciate the illustration here and seeing Narragansett excel to the caliber. It means all of the plans that we worked on in the school committee side over the past couple of years, academic recovery, everything that you're putting into place is working, and that's really positive to see.
Great, thanks, Alex. And I think that's an excellent point, right? So if you were to look at Narragansett and just go kind of vertically up and down, right? So people within our band of free and reduced price lunch include North Kingstown, South Kingstown, Charahoe, Cumberland, all their kind of equivalent scores, are in the negative, right? And we are very strongly in the positive, right? And so so when you look at similar demographics, right, we are really doing quite well.
Awesome, thank you.
So, so where are we going, right? And that's certainly an important piece to consider as we think about a budget and we think about devoting resources. So one of the big drivers for us is their last year, so the current freshmen have to follow a new set of regulations for graduation, and so that requires some shifting of our resource and able to do that. So requires more language, more math, more credits, and so there's some things that we have been doing and planning for over time to allow that. That's part of our AP push. We've also kind of restructured our schedules and restructured our pathways to accommodate that. Again, we continue to look at school transitions. School transitions are really hard for students, you know, going from elementary to middle and middle to high. So that's a real area of focus for us and making sure we have the right supports for placing students. Mental health is huge. You know, we have a great partnership with Thunder Mist Health where students can kind of access mental health resources through Thunder Mist within their school day. That's a grant that's eventually going to go away. We are staffed well, but we have had to make some cuts in that for this upcoming school year, just because our resources are getting more constrained and we can't continue to offer everything we were able to offer when we had some of the COVID money from the federal government, unfortunately. You know, so I'm not going to read the slide to you. You can take a look at this, but you know, there are lots of things where we have had, you know, accolades across the state. One really delightful thing was that we had Skills USA champions in our CTE programs. What that means is that that's a statewide competition where every CTE program in the state kind of sends competitors. And we had our students win in several categories, and they went down to the national championships in Atlanta last summer. So it was really exciting. So one of the things that I want you all to be aware of that I think is really important is that Narragansett is not alone in population challenges. And so when you kind of look at the chart in front of you, while we're certainly close to the top in terms of the number of students who we have lost since 2019, it's really all of South County. Right? And so all of South County has had severe challenges with that. South Kingstown's at over 18%. Westerly, Narragansett, Jamestown, Newport. So you kind of go through, and those are really the top ones. And so that has required some adjustments for us, and we have made those adjustments along the way. As you'll see, in a moment, we eliminated 9 positions for the upcoming school year. We've made other adjustments along the way as we go forward, and so this is something that as a community we need to continue to have a conversation about in terms of, how are we dealing with population loss and what adjustments do we need to make going forward. So this is the enrollment projection, so you'll be able to see how many students are where. And so for next year at the elementary school, we do predict will be around 300 students. At the peer school, at the middle school will be around 250, and at the high school will be around 370 or 375. So overall, while we do predict that we'll still be over 900 last year, it continues to be a challenge because when we are graduating classes of around 95 and taking in kindergarten classes of around 45, you're continually dropping somewhere between 30 and 50 students a year. So it's a challenge. It's not that people don't want to come to our schools. I get regular calls from people K through 8 that ask, how can I send our children over here? And in some cases we can tuition. In other cases there are some regulations from the Department of Education that make that difficult to do, having to do with special education and other services. And so, we do take in, though, a number of students at our high school. As soon as it's allowed, we have lots of students apply. So, which gets to, our incoming students. So, we do anticipate that we will be somewhere around 100 students, give or take. This is just an estimate on our part. This year we're at around 91 students, and we think we'll be somewhere around 100 next year, coming into all our programs. One program that I will highlight that has been really popular is our digital media, where they've been doing a lot of filming. Our student actually, one of our digital media students actually does the filming and broadcast of the school committee meetings now, so they get to do kind of all of those things. And our computer science program is just amazing. And so we continue to get students into that. Outgoing students, we think will be somewhere between 30 and 40. We always kind of overestimate this just a little bit, just in case. And so, just like we have students who choose to come to Narragansett, sometimes we have Narragansett students who want a program that we may not offer or have another reason to go to a different school. Often we do have students who are already enrolled in some of these charter schools that may move to Narragansett, and then we are responsible for their tuition. So they may not have been in Narragansett to begin with, but we then have to, as long as they are a resident here and they're attending another school and they've established residency, if they go to a charter school, we do have to pay it, unfortunately. So how does that all come together? Well, there are a few things that we really have to think about. One, cost of contractual obligations. So roughly 80% of the cost of the school budget is staffing, right? That's most of it, and as it should be, right? Because education is a person-heavy endeavor, and so if it wasn't the bulk of our costs, we'd be doing something wrong. Reductions in state aid. So we had roughly a $300,000 cut in state aid this year, about 13%. Why is that? Because over the last couple of years, the state has been quote unquote holding harmless districts that had population loss since 2019. And so they were maintaining our aid at the 2020 level. The state has suddenly discovered that they don't have any money, and therefore they are passing that on to us. We have done a great job of financing our long-term capital investments. That, in truth, has been a commitment on the part of the town and of the school system. And so, those of you who have spent some time in our schools, you can really see that, they are clean, they are well-maintained, and they are, safe and respectful places for students to learn, and that sends a message. And I think that's a really important message that we do. And so to continue to maintain that is an important piece. Then we have, the school system goals, right? And so that's really an important piece about early childhood education, career and tech, and AP programs, continue to invest in those. We are obligated for charter school and CTE tuition obligations, and also just to continue to grow and to innovate and to try new programs. So, as I mentioned before, we are having some changes. So we've had to make some major changes at our middle school to accommodate changes in population. So overall, we are cutting right around 9 positions this year. So that is a pinch. Unfortunately, often they are positions that we would love to keep. So for example, we'd love to keep, we've had an additional school psychologist at our high school, kind of coming out of COVID, to really help students. We're not going to be able to maintain that. At the elementary school, we've made some adjustments for population, and the same holds true at the peer school. We were fortunate in that we had 7 retirements this year, so we really are kind of having to quote unquote fully cut 2 teachers that we would really kind of love to keep. But the others are retirements, and we've been able to adjust our positions to accommodate their leaving. So our capital plan, which is a really important part of our budget, is roughly about the same cost-wise of where it was last year. And as a reminder, there is a town council resolution that asks the school committee to spend roughly 3%, the equivalent of 3% of our budget on capital improvements, and to keep about 2% of our budget as an emergency fund. And so this is roughly 3% of our budget overall. Some of the highlights that we have in our capital improvement this year. So at the elementary school, we're going to be replacing the gym HVAC unit. So none of these are kind of like big flashy things, right? But this is why our schools are in good shape, because we take care of the things that need to get taken care of, like HVAC, window replacement, switch gear around electricity. Steve has explained to me what this is 7 times, and I cannot relay it to you. I'm sorry. Taking care of the painting, all of those things. Those are really critical infrastructure things that if you don't take care of them, they lead to higher costs in the future. And so that is why that we take care of them when they are needed. For those of you who were able to be at our capital improvement meeting, we have a 10-year plan where we kind of look forward and we project out what our capital improvements will be over time, and we budget for those accordingly. If you look at districts around us, many of them are having to go out to bond or are having to go to voter initiatives to have the money to be able to just maintain their schools. Because the town, the council, the school committee have worked together to make sure that our schools are well maintained and are in good shape. We don't have to go to the community to ask for that type of thing. So overall, the total budget is less than 1%. So we're at 0.99%. And so why is that? Because one, we eliminated 10 positions, or 9 positions. Two, we were pretty conservative in our budget, not so that we were threatening programs, but really looking outside for different grants and different ways to help support our operations. And so, I do think that it's a really reasonable budget given, one, the adjustment in population that we've had this year, and two, the economic conditions that are out there. So, you'll note that really the difference is roughly what our state aid was cut, right? Give or take. And so that really was a kick for us. While I recognize that state aid cut is, roughly about 1% of our budget, lots of our budget is restricted for salaries and those things, and there's not a lot of discretionary spending, and so when we get that state aid cut, it can really hurt. And so, how does this all kind of work together? Well, our salaries only went up, 1.28% because we did have a reduction in positions, and the same holds true for our benefits. That was a little bit higher overall, but because we had a reduction in positions, that's a little bit lower. Our purchase professional and technical services, again, that's around the rate of inflation for the other pieces. And so, as you know, as you go through these categories, we're either below the rate of inflation, or right around where it is. And so that is kind of where we want to be. Unfortunately, things get a little more expensive every year. So if we just roll forward some of the things that we're doing, it's going to be around 3 to 5% more costly year to year. So if you look at the overview of our budget, and kind of look at this pie chart, right? What you're really seeing is that just about 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits. And so, when we make adjustments to our staffing, we don't like to do that unless, it's really called for by shifts in population. But that's really the bulk of our spending. Everything else goes in support of that, that instructional core, that interaction of teacher, student, and content. And that really only happens, right, when, we're doing everything we can for our teachers. I will take a moment and say, we have some really great teachers. Yeah, and so we've spent a lot of time training them. We've put a lot of investment into making sure that we have well-qualified individuals that are committed to students, that are, committed to learning themselves. And, we're really proud of all the things that we've done. We have a great relationship with both our teachers and our support staff, and they have worked with us really closely to ensure the success of the district. And so when we do have to make staffing adjustments, it is really painful. We do it when it's necessary, but we also try to make sure that we are working with them collaboratively going forward. So how are we going to fund the budget, right? And that's really the key piece here. So, right now, the committee is requesting a 2.9% increase, and that is, a lot of that is to cover the cut in state aid and be able to maintain services where we are. And so that is, an $832,659 kind of increase over last year, 2.91%. And if you look, that is mainly because our state aid is going down, and we are fully using our full fund balance to fund both operating and capital expenses. And so if you were to look at kind of a readout of our fund balance, it is fully committed to make sure that our ask remains reasonable of the of the town council. So then if you were to look, right, I'm just kind of repeating that 132 piece, you go to the next one. So one of the things I do want to highlight for you is that when you go to the office of the Secretary of, I think it's Secretary of State, at the Rhode Island Governor's Office, and you can look up all of the different budgets of all the different towns, right? And so I did that, a little bit recently, and you can see how much each town, what percentages of each town's budget goes to education. So we picked a few that are kind of comparable, right? And you look, Barrington, 61% of their town budget goes to education. South Kingstown, 61%. Westerly, 53%. North Kingstown, 52%. East Greenwich, 51%. Narragansett is at 40%. Okay, and so again, part of the reason our state aid gets cut is that in the funding formula, they really analyze that Narragansett, the property values in Narragansett and the community has the ability to pay, and so that gets factored into the funding formula, and yet, of the whole town budget, only 40% is going to education, and that is because we've been really responsible over time of our requests of the town, right? And so again, while our request is slightly more than we've requested in the past this year, we're usually around 2.3, 2.4%. The reason for that is the cut in state aid, and so to maintain services, we really would need to be right around that 2.9%. And when you look at the municipalities around us, less money is being devoted to education in Narragansett than it is in surrounding towns. So with that, I would just kind of make the appeal that, and I've heard many of you say these same things, that excellent schools attract families to live in Narragansett. So if you don't have great schools, people are not going to move to your town. If we have great schools, employers want to be here. Partnerships emerge with universities, kind of all those different things. We have really innovative programs. We have lots of parents that come to us from different towns and say, I cannot believe all the things that we are offering here. As I said before, to have great schools, you got to have a great staff. To have a great staff, you have to compensate them, and you have to make sure that they're treated well and well trained. And for us, we try to be really thoughtful about our allocation of resources. We are lean but not cheap, and so we try to make everything work in the best way that we possibly can. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that you all might have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cummings, on once again a very thorough presentation that I've become very familiar with over the last 4 or 5 years now. And thank you, Karen, Christine, Narragansett School Committee members for all being here and for your additional efforts, as well as each of the staff members, each building department head, for the tireless efforts that go into creating the budget and that goes into behind the scenes to get it to where it is today. So really appreciate those efforts. So I will open the floor up to either Councilor Torialde or Councilor Vignali. Why don't we start with you, Councilor Vignali?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to reiterate that the schools are doing an amazing job in keeping the taxes down and keeping the percentage of the budget going towards the schools is just an amazing thing for what you are able to do with those kids. I know I have 2 grandchildren in the schools, and every day they come home, I'm just totally amazed at what happens in their classroom. So thank you to the teachers, thank you to all of you. I really, all I could just say is I really don't have a question, just praise. I mean, wonderful that, the change in math and being at the top and all the great things that are happening. I mean, I think you did a great job in presenting this budget. I did attend the capital budget hearing. I was there and I was very impressed with the way people were able, the departments were able to come in and say, look, I have a plan, I have a 5-year plan, I have a 10-year plan, and this is what we need to do this year so that next year we have to do this, and so things are maintained and looking ahead that things aren't going to just all of a sudden hit and we're going to be in a mess. And I was just so impressed with that when I sat there. So that's really all I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll give you a couple extra minutes, unless you want to go next, Councilor Dawkins. Just to develop your thoughts.
It was a great presentation. I've been reading it. I support the school system 100% if it does that.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Dr. Prentice, a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Just looking at the enrollment change by district,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any thoughts as to why Providence is down so significantly?
Charter schools.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they have lots of students. So their actual school age population has gone up, but they have lots of students as a district where students have left Providence to seek charters either in surrounding communities or within Providence. So it's a major drain on their budget, quite honestly. And so because when a student goes to a charter school, we pay about 85% of the per pupil funding that you get for that. So that's been a real challenge for them.
Okay. Looking at the enrollment projections, what is the percentage that we expect to lose from grade 8 to grade 9? Schools like Proud or Pemberton LaSalle.
Great question. So we typically lose somewhere between kind of 4 and 9%. We'd typically under 10%. There are some blips from year to year. So for example, last year we had a group of students that were very high level basketball players that wanted to go to a different community that has a very high level girls basketball program. So that's the irony of us winning this year. And so there was a group of students that did that. So some of it is sports sometimes when we lose students. Often what we find is that while they may leave from grade 8 to grade 9, we do have a lot of the students that come back. And so it may not be, the new setting may not be everything that they wanted, or they may want the opportunity, they thought maybe they could do athletics at a different level, and then they come back and find that they want to kind of be at the in the Narragansett level, and so it kind of goes back and forth. There is way more mobility of students than there has ever been, particularly in Rhode Island. It's very interesting with the opening of kind of CTE, where you can virtually go to any district. Student mobility has increased quite a bit. We actually, the fact that we take in, almost 3 times as many students as go out is very unusual. Most districts are even, and many districts kind of lose more students than they get.
With us taking in additional students, do we eat that cost, or is that
No.
provided by other
Nope.
districts?
So there is a formula put out by RIDE, and so each district pays essentially, a percentage of their per pupil, right? And so most of the districts around us, even though we're a little bit high, and we are high because if you think about it, our denominator is a little bit smaller, right, than the districts around us, but we still have the responsibility for all the other costs. We are not paying for things like, for those students, transportation or some of those other associated costs. And so what they pay, A, more than covers what the cost of attendance, and B, those are seats that would otherwise be empty, right? And so these are classes that we offer anyway for our Narragansett students. And so when we get 20 students into a grade level, let's say, we're anticipating will be somewhere between 15 and 20 students into next year's grade 9. We're going to be offering geometry, and whether there is 14 students or 17 students in there, we're still going to offer the class, right? So the cost is the same, so actually adding those students defrays the cost rather than it adds the cost.
So I guess kind of to that end, is there any marketing we can do?
We do, we certainly do, and so we'll make sure we'll loop you all in there. We do open houses that are very well attended. We do marketing in kind of the local publications. Follow us on Instagram. And so there's all sorts of social media pieces that we do. We have stopped short of getting a billboard, but that might be next.
I would also add a soundbite, a shout out to Lauren Ruggiero, who's done a tremendous job at outreach and communications to the district as a whole. You know, since being on the school committee and then transferring over to the town council, you know, I still get the monthly updates about what's going on in the district. You know, the website as well as for each of our schools is easily navigatable. And I think we're, you know, the open houses, I think we're doing a tremendous job as a district at showcasing all of the opportunities that we have here in Narragansett. I think there's a lot of fundamental issues that we can see across the state that are definitely not unique to Narragansett. Lack of affordable housing, the marketability of the town as a whole might be more of what needs to be worked on rather than a specific district of the schools.
Right, and so, you know, we're always open to suggestion, right? And so certainly welcome that feedback and would love to have it. And, you know, one of the things we do try to do is to kind of get good and positive vibes out there, right? When good things are happening with the schools. You know, we're excited to have one of our students come to town council, I think, at your next meeting. You know, and so I appreciate that, bringing that forward. So we're going to continue to try to get the good news out there. You know, unfortunately, social media kind of works both ways. Sometimes some ideas that misrepresent what's actually happening in the schools can, you know, widely spread. So we try to make sure that we're kind of putting out accurate and timely information for people so they can make the right judgments about the schools.
One last question for me. Just looking at pre-K for next year, we're looking at a class of 70, which is a pretty sharp increase from prior years' classes. I know it's impossible to predict forward, but is this indicative of a larger trend, where we might see a similar class size in the following year?
So,
or any indicators that you have at this point?
Yeah, great question. So we do a demographic study. We contract with a group called New England School Development Council, NASDAQ, and they look at birth rates in the area and available housing and kind of do that whole demographic piece. So we are hopeful over the next couple of years we will be right around this same pace. We initially had thought that we would have to reduce one class this year based on last year's population, and then we had actually more signups than we expected, and then when we had NASDAQ kind of redo their numbers for us, they are predicting for the next year or two we should be right around this pace. So, which would be great news, absolutely.
Do we traditionally see much drop-off from kindergarten through elementary? Or
No.
preschool through elementary?
We do not. And so one of the things that we noticed over time, especially with our younger families, is that they tend to stay where they, if there is a continuous program from pre-K through elementary school, they tend to stay where they start pre-K, right? Just because it's convenient, you're in a routine, kind of all those things. So when we combine that with the research that we know around students, you know, really needing a high quality preschool, the school committee in 2016, 2017 really committed to having that continuous program of pre-K, you know, all the way through. And so we do get most of the students in the area coming to us for pre-K, and if they live in Narragansett, it is very rarely that we have a student that attends us for pre-K and then will leave for private school.
Any other questions? Councilor Torrielli?
None at the moment.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to jump around, and it's a gift and a curse to be a former school committee member, but I promise I'm going to do my best to make it more of a gift. Back on the on slide 8 and 9, looking at change in math and reading achievement. Can you just elaborate on, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but how achievement is measured?
Sure, it's months above grade level, right?
Yeah.
In comparison to the kind of Rhode Island baseline, right? And so if you were to look at the math one, right? So if you go back one, right? And so What this one says, and where Narragansett is highlighted, is that our students, right, so 0.0 is exactly where students would be predicted to be, if that makes sense, right, across the district on average. So we are roughly, 6 to 7 months above grade level, right, in mathematics across the district. And so that's pretty significant, if you think about that, because if you think about the amount of learning that a student would do, between September and, whatever, like the end of spring, right, you're looking at most of a school year, right? And so that's pretty significant for us. And so when you combine that with where we are in our free and reduced lunch, which is naturally something that makes learning a little bit more of a challenge for students if they don't have the right resources in place to be able to learn at the rate that we would like them to, that really shows that our growth, right, has been 6 months of learning ahead since 2019. It's a little convoluted measure, I'll be honest with you. Like, I had to read it about 5 times to understand it. But really the base message is kids are way ahead of where they were in 2019.
Excellent. That's awesome to hear, and shocking to hear, and real, and maybe not. Just with all of the academic recovery that we've had to, our students have had to undergo since COVID, it's really amazing to see the turnaround time to go from 2019, here we are now, and
I just want to be clear, it doesn't mean that there aren't districts that have higher scores. There are districts that have higher scores, without a doubt, right? But the very fact that we're growing at such a clip, I think is really something to be proud of.
headed in the right direction. And it also speaks to the low student to faculty ratio, I think.
Indeed,
That's
right,
greatly
and that
done.
matters.
And congratulations on, seeing the 5-star preschool program. Awesome. I that's one thing that I like to remind the district every time, and it needs to be celebrated as often as possible. In regards to the preschool enrollment, where are we currently standing? Are we at full capacity going into it? Yeah, usually.
So we've already started a wait list for beyond where we are now. And so, again, if we get to a wait list that would necessitate adding a class, we'll have that conversation with the school committee.
Well, I was going to ask actually, in case somebody were to listen in,
Yes.
seeing the attendance, grade 1, 35, and seeing where the highest population of our grade levels in the elementary school are, everyone's coming into pre-K, 70. Does it get warranted to say, we'll reduce here, put it here, or we'll add an additional preschool class in its entirety? Do you have a number in your mind as to what that level is in order to add an additional or expand the preschool program?
So without getting too far into the weeds, right? We roughly look at, when we get to around 10 students on a wait list, 9, 10 students on a wait list, that's when we're able to add a class. And so, again, we're not there yet because there is some movement. People have unexpected moves, those types of things, right? But that would be a good problem to have.
And in order for it to also be considered full, there is also an allocated amount of space for residents who come in and move in.
There is, and there needs to be an allocated amount of space for what's known as early intervention, which is students who are in need of enhanced services at ages 2 or 3. And so we are obligated to save some seats for early intervention students who we are required to offer preschool to.
Excellent. And then I noticed, just to call back, that you had mentioned that there was a reduction in the need of specialized instruction. Wonderful. It means that the programs that have been put into place are working. Are those going away at all, or are those going to be staying in place? Even though the need is declining, I just wonder about the services.
No, absolutely. So the services will still be there, despite sometimes the best efforts of the federal government. And so what will happen, right, is part of our challenge is, we are obligated, and Dr. Denton says this way more eloquently than I do, but I will try to paraphrase her, right, is essentially, whether there is one student in first grade or 5 students in first grade that require a service, we still have to provide the teacher and provide the service. And so the cost of that service, if it's 1 or 2 students, is exponentially greater than if it's 5 or 6 or 7 students that need it. So it is really good news for students that if we have less students who are in need of those specialized services, it means that they're growing and thriving at a developmentally appropriate rate and kind of all those pieces. Unfortunately, it's not always a cost reduction, right? Because we still have other students who may need that service, and so sometimes, on paper, it may look like it even increases our costs, because on a per pupil basis, if it goes from 5 students to 2 students, on paper, it looks like an increase, even though we have less students needing the service, right? So that's the conundrum of being in a small district.
And so to reiterate, and again, a shout out to all of the hard work that goes into creating the budget every year. I know nobody likes to cut positions, and you have reiterated, I know in years past, this year I'm sure is no different, but I want to ask anyway, there's no concerns about the loss of services that we're providing our students with the cutting of staff and where the cuts are being made.
Yeah. So in many cases, I will tell you that we don't have concern because they are appropriate cuts given the level of student population. So, I'm not concerned, for example, of our grade 1 because we have a very small grade 1 cohort. It's appropriate for them to go down to 2 classes, right? Where we do have some concern is when we get to things that are kind of really things that are nice to have, but we can no longer be able to sustain given the budget realities, right? So having the extra school psychologist has been awesome. It's been good for kids. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can sustain and ask the town for a responsible level of funding. Things like our behavior or our SEL coach, those are things that we would like to have. We think that we can absorb those into other situations, right? But certainly it'll be some adjustments. We're also being proactive. So for example, our physical therapist is retiring this year, so we're gonna make that a contracted service, right? We think we can get a better price for that. And so, so there are lots of things that, while I won't say won't have any effect, I think that we have a really thoughtful group of school leaders and also a really responsive and thoughtful group of educators in all of our schools that will make the adjustment.
Excellent. So I promise to wrap this up in like 2 or 3 more questions, or statements. Where was I going with that? One note that I had made, and I apologize if I missed it in one of the workshops. I have not read the latest course curriculum, but I know in school committees past, it had been brought to our attention about the opportunities to work with and engage with the URI campus, the Bay campus. Has there been any additional conversations or programs about taking advantage of what's on our doorstep?
Yep, so we partner with the URI very deeply. We do a lot with them in our computer science, and our agri-science, digital media. We actually have a great partnership with them for teacher training, and so our education CTE works with them, and we also are a partner district, so we actually, beginning next year, will host student interns / student teachers for a full year in partnership with the URI. So that's all really terrific. We are in the midst of exploring doing some work at the Bay campus. So our agri-science program is thinking hard about and designing a future CTE that is more blue economy based, and so that will be very much in partnership with the URI Bay campus. And so whether that is aquaculture or that is a little bit more into some of the other maritime needs of the region. So we are working with them and in kind of in the process of designing that. We've applied for a grant from the Department of Education and the Governor's Workforce Board to fund that research and that design process. So we're hoping to have something in place really by next winter.
Excellent. That's awesome to hear. And I know a lot of people here are probably excited to hear that as well. Last, one final question and then one reminder to the council afterwards. But when it comes to the cuts from the state aid and the anticipated unfortunate cuts from the federal level, what is it that we can do as a council to support the initiatives, the visions, to ensure that Narragansett students continue to have a high quality education? Is there any advocacy that we can do on the district's behalf? I know you are already fighting the good fight, all of you are, so.
I appreciate that. So there are a couple of things that I think, go unseen that are really important. So one, if you were to go to our website, I believe I've given some of you copies of this already, there's about an 18-page single-spaced list of unfunded mandates from the Rhode Island legislature of things that we're responsible for. Everything from curriculum to the secondary regulations to all sorts of things that they say we have to do, that we have to fund, that community has to fund, and that RIDE doesn't support, or the legislature doesn't provide any financial support. So one of the things that I think is really important when you talk with our legislators, and I will say, our legislators are great. They are regularly in touch with me. If there's an education related bill, they do reach out. But really being thoughtful about what the requirements are that we put in place, and having a realization of the fiscal impact of some of the pet projects that may be, kind of going on in the legislature, I think is really important. So that's one. I think two, continuing to fight for there to be able to be housing within Narragansett. I know that's something that's a hot topic at the council level. From the school level, we think we have great schools, right? And we think that, it's a great place for families to live. I think it's hard to afford a house in Narragansett. And so the work that you're doing to make that housing affordable, I think is really critical. And I think three, and I can't emphasize this enough, really being in alignment with the school committee about their goals, understanding things like why we need a high quality preschool, understanding why we need college level classes, understanding why we need professional development, are all really critical. And so having an understanding of our school budget and alignment and support of the school committee goals, I think is really critical.
Excellent. And we will do all that we can to keep up the good fight with you. And the last is actually just something I just want to bring up. Can you go to slide 12, please?
What's the topic?
Oh, the topic. It's enrollment projections. This is just for the council and the general public. Just to reiterate a point. I saw a 923 and I thought like my pulse skipped a little bit. I was shocked to see the number that low. It's something that we had always anticipated was coming, the reality of declining enrollment, and I know it's an issue that all districts across the state and around the country are facing. We're certainly feeling it here. We are a small town and we are definitely seeing it. It's just a reminder to the council that, when looking ahead over the next couple of years, we really want to do all that we can to support the families coming into our town, and do everything that we can to try to reverse the script. But if you look at a trend line, as the district has shared, and the attendance records are in every meeting, you can see consistently, even well before our time here and before COVID, that there was a slightly steady decline. And, you know, one of the major issues that this council will be addressing is, you know, the lack of affordable housings and the affordability of property in town as a whole. And it's not something that's going to be solved overnight, but it's something that we're well aware of, and we're going to be workshopping with, and are really eager to hear feedback from the community as well as the school committee. You know, we're all in this together here. I know you guys sit in your own world and you guys control that portion of the budget, but you guys see it more so than any of us on the school side, and we really greatly value the families who come into our district, and we want to see that continue and not go the other way. So it's a pitch to the school committee members as well as anyone in town. If you have any good ideas on ways in which we can help to reverse this script, let us know. And with that being said, really appreciate you, Dr. Cummings, for coming forth and sharing this very thorough presentation. Karen, for the very thorough work that constantly goes on behind the scenes. I'm sure any additional funds were squirreled away appropriately. And you know, just as a reminder to the council, we are in a hearing, so we do have the opportunity, if there is anyone in this largely populated room from the public who wishes to come up and speak, you may do so. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? Yes, please come forward. Now, does she need to be sworn in, or just name and address? Okay.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Please state your name and address.
Stephanie Caldwell, 104 Camden Road.
Thank you.
I have a written down statement because public speaking is not my forte.
Oh, that's okay.
But thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
My name is Steph Caldwell, and I'm here tonight both as a parent of a student in the district and as an employee of our preschool program. I'm a teacher's assistant as of this year. And I just wanted to speak to you tonight to ask that you approve the budget increase requested by Dr. Cummings, because this decision directly impacts the future of our students and the strength of our schools. As we saw earlier, you know, the town provided amount is slightly less than the municipal budget provided to the schools in our surrounding areas. But yet, even with that smaller share, our teachers and staff have delivered incredible results, as he highlighted earlier. And this success isn't accidental. It's the result of dedicated, talented educators and administrators who show up every day to make a difference. As a parent and someone who works directly with our youngest learners, I see that impact firsthand. Teachers are the heart of our schools. They are amazing. Our teachers are unbelievable. They provide not only education, but stability, encouragement, and connection, all of which are critical to students. I ask that we work to protect student-teacher positions, that we risk losing the momentum we've worked so hard to build over the past few years. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. I think you did a great job for someone who doesn't like to do this. And couldn't agree with you more. A lot of really amazing points that you brought up. We have some amazing programs here, and we'd like to see them continue and be preserved over the coming years. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public or the school committee? Actually, I'll let the public speak first, and then I'll give the school committee an opportunity. Anyone else from the public wish to comment? Unusual. Anyone from the school committee have any comments or final thoughts?
Sure.
Yes. Welcome, Chair Tammy McNeese.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
It's not a question, it's just really a comment. It's a thank you. So we just are very appreciative of your very thoughtful approach, your great questions, and our partnership in that communication. And so that's all I would say moving forward. It's going to be a very challenging budget season. If you have any questions, please reach out to Pete, because he can provide any of those kind of detailed answers to all 5 of you. And then, you know, keep in touch. You know, we've got a placeholder for a joint workshop that we're happy to have if you have any questions. But please, leading up to that, if you have any questions, please reach out to Pete, and then be in touch with us if you want to meet again as a full body, or if you get your questions answered. So it's really just thank you, that communication, that partnership, we really appreciate that.
Excellent. And does she need to say her name and
Oh,
address for the
Tammy
record?
McNeese, 50 Lambert Street, in Narragansett.
Even though I know we all know each other, I just wanted
No,
to
it's
make
a
it
public,
official.
it's a public hearing, I think that's good, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All
Thank you so
right,
much.
thank you.
Anyone else from the school committee wish to comment? Excellent. Well, I think that's probably going to conclude. And is there a motion to close the hearing at 7:08 p.m.?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Anything, that concludes this evening's business. Awesome. Have a great night, everyone.